For centuries, people have celebrated Halloween as a harmless night of costumes, laughter, and candy. But what if the story you've been told was never true? Beneath the plastic masks and glowing pumpkins lies a history steeped in rituals, forgotten gods, and ancient beliefs that have quietly shaped the modern world. Behind every trick or treat echoes a whisper from the past, a whisper most have chosen to ignore. This video isn't about fear or superstition. It's about uncovering the truth hidden behind one of the world's most popular celebrations. From the Celtic festival of Samhain to the church's quiet transformation of pagan rites, to the shadowy forces that may still influence the symbols we use today. Nothing about Halloween is as innocent as it seems. Prepare to see this night through different eyes. Because once you understand where it truly came from, you'll never look at a jack-o'-lantern the same way again. Before we dive into the hidden truths behind Halloween and the secrets of Samhain, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. By doing this, you'll stay updated with our latest explorations into mysteries, history, and the unknown questions that have puzzled people for centuries. Don't miss a single revelation. Hit that bell and join us as we uncover what they don't want you to know. For centuries, as the leaves began to turn and the chill of autumn crept across the lands, a night like no other was quietly observed. To the casual observer, it may have seemed ordinary, merely the end of the harvest season. But to those who lived in the ancient Celtic world, it was a night when the boundaries between the living and the dead became fragile, permeable, and nearly invisible. This was Samhain, a festival that has since been buried under layers of tradition, forgotten by the passing time, yet still echoing through the rituals we now call Halloween. The Celts believed that as summer faded into darkness, the world of the spirits drew closer. Fires were lit on hilltops and in valleys, their flames reaching upward as though to guide wandering souls back to the realm of the living, or perhaps to warn them away. Families would gather, preparing offerings of food and drink, a gesture both of hospitality and of appeasement. It was not celebration as we understand it today. It was vigilance, respect, and an acknowledgement of forces beyond human comprehension. Every flicker of flame, every shadow cast by the bonfire, held meaning. Nothing was arbitrary. On Samhain, the veil separating our world from the other world was said to grow thin. Time itself seemed to bend, and the dead were thought to move freely among the living. Children and elders alike were taught that this night demanded careful observation, for spirits could be benevolent or malevolent. Masks, costumes, and painted faces were not simply for amusement. They were protective. To disguise oneself was to become indistinguishable from wandering spirits, a subtle act of survival in a world teeming with unseen presences. These rituals were never uniform, for the Celts were a people of regionally distinct traditions. In some villages, priests or druids would perform ceremonies on sacred mounds, invoking protection and insight, while in others, the festival was marked by storytelling, recounting legends of heroes, of spirits, and of creatures that existed in the liminal spaces between night and day. Every fire, every chant, every gesture was layered with meaning, a code written in the language of light and shadow. Yet, beyond the fire and the ritual, there was a deeper purpose that modern observers rarely grasp. Samhain was a time for reflection, for acknowledgement of mortality, for the contemplation of the cycles of life. The harvest had ended, winter loomed, and with the end of abundance came the stark reminder that life is finite. In those moments, the Celts confronted questions that remain universal. What happens after death? What forces govern the unseen world? And how does the living maintain harmony with the spirits that surround it? Even the foods prepared for Samhain were not simple sustenance. Apples, nuts, grains, and other harvest offerings were presented not only as gifts to family and community, but also as symbolic acts meant to honor those who had passed. In a world where the line between life and death was observed with both fear and reverence, to neglect these rituals was to invite misfortune. Every action was imbued with intention, every gesture a link between corporeal and the spiritual. As night deepened, villagers would move from their homes to the central fires, a journey that symbolized transition, crossing thresholds, stepping from heart to flame, was a microcosm of the larger transition between worlds. It was a night of endings and beginnings, of unseen presences and whispered warnings, of recognition that human life is intimately connected to forces beyond understanding. The air itself was thick with anticipation, as though every rustle of leaves or distant cry of an animal carried a message from the other side. The modern observer, accustomed to bright lights and commercial spectacle, would scarcely recognize the quiet intensity of these ancient gatherings. There was no candy, no frivolous revelry. There was focus, a meditative engagement with the mysteries of existence. The Celts understood that the night carried power, a moment when a veil thinned and the universe allowed glimpses into hidden truths. And while centuries have passed, remnants of this understanding persist, encoded in the symbols, in the costumes, and in the persistent fascination with spirits and the afterlife that haunts our collective imagination every October. Even today, when children dress in costumes and carve pumpkins, echoes of Samhain remain. The masks, the lights, the focus on the liminal. These are not mere coincidences. They are the faint trace of a night that once demanded deep respect and attention. Beneath the veneer of entertainment lies the memory of an ancient acknowledgement. Life is fleeting, death is inevitable, and there exists a space between worlds that invites both wonder and caution. Samhain was more than a festival. It was a moment of heightened awareness, a meditation on mortality, and a bridge to the unseen. It is a night that calls upon humanity to remember that the ordinary is always intertwined with the extraordinary, that every ending carries a seed of beginning, and that even in the quietest shadows, ancient truths persist. To understand Halloween, one must first peer through the veil of Samhain and recognize that the night is never truly empty, that the world of the living and the world of the spirits were always connected, and that what we now call tradition was once a sacred dialogue with the unknown. And as the fires of Samhain dimmed with the approach of dawn, a silent promise lingered in the cold air, that the memory of the night, the whispers of the departed, and the lessons of the living would endure, passing through generations, awaiting the moment when curiosity and reverence meet once again. For those willing to look beyond the mass of modern celebration, Samhain remains not merely a festival of old, but a doorway to understanding, a reflection of humanity's enduring desire to grasp the mysteries that surround life, death, and the spaces in between. As the centuries unfolded, the world of the Celts slowly changed. The fires that once burned atop the hills, illuminating the thin veil between the living and the dead, began to flicker in a world increasingly shaped by the influence of the church. The Druids, once the keepers of wisdom and intermediaries with the unseen, gradually receded, their voices replaced by prayers and sermons. Yet, even as religious authorities spread across the lands, the energy of Samhain could not be fully extinguished. It lingered, persistent, subtle, woven into the fabric of time and memory, waiting for the eyes willing to see it. The Church, recognizing the power and resonance of these ancient rituals, chose a path of transformation rather than obliteration. Where the Celts had honored the dead and marked the end of the harvest, the Church introduced the Feast of All Saints, a day to honor the holy and the faithful departed. The date, October 31st, became All Hallows Eve, a night preceding the celebration of the saints. At first glance, it may have seemed a complete replacement, a conversion of pagan custom into sanctioned devotion. But beneath the surface, the echoes of the original festival remained, like shadows cast by a fire long extinguished. Symbols that had once carried a direct connection to spirits and protection began to take on new meaning. The masks and costumes, intended to confuse wandering souls or blend with spirits, were now seen as celebratory gestures. The bonfires, once central to communal rituals and spiritual communication, became part of festive gatherings, their original purpose softened but not entirely forgotten. It was a quiet negotiation between old and new, a dialogue of belief that allowed the essence of Samhain persist, hidden beneath layers of doctrine and ceremony. Stories from the period reveal a subtle tension. Clergy wrote of rituals that reminded them of older, pagan ways, cautioning against what they considered superstitions. Yet they also recognized the power of the night itself. Even with sermons and prayers, The energy that had drawn villagers to the fires and to the threshold of their homes continued to pulse, as if the land itself refused to forget. Festivals, they noted, were not easily eradicated when they touched upon something universal: our fascination with the unseen, our desire to honor what we cannot fully comprehend, and our need to acknowledge the passage between life and death. In some regions, the transition was nearly seamless. The church would incorporate local customs, blending them with teachings of saints and angels. Offerings of food and drink were redirected. Prayers replaced chants, and symbols were given new narratives. Yet for those who watched closely, for those who understood the language of shadows, the transformation was only superficial. The night still carried the whispers of the dead, the flicker of unseen fires, and the unspoken understanding that the living and the departed shared a fragile connection. This delicate balance between tradition and transformation shaped centuries of practice. People continue to gather on October 31st, honoring both what they had been taught and what they instinctively remembered. The church, in absorbing these practices, inadvertently preserved the spiritual potency of Samhain. Without even acknowledging it, they allowed the night to remain a threshold, a liminal space where contemplation of mortality and the unseen could still occur. The rituals of All Hallows' Eve, therefore, became a mirror of the old festival. Candles were lit, costumes worn, and offerings made, not only in celebration, but as a lingering homage to forces older than any creed. The night retained its dual nature, a surface of sanctioned festivity and a hidden layer of remembrance, a conduit to mysteries that the church could never fully contain. It is here, in this transformation, that one sees the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of ritual. Samhain had not disappeared. It had evolved. In embracing the framework of the church, the festival survived centuries of change, subtly teaching lessons about the impermanence of life, the inevitability of death, and persistence of memory. Every whispered prayer, every candle flame, every shadow cast by a costume was a link to a lineage that stretched back to ancient forests, to bonfires on windswept hills, to a people who understood the thin veil between worlds better than most. And so, the night carried on, layered with meaning both old and new. All Hallows' Eve became a bridge, connecting generations, cultures, and beliefs. The church had guided the celebration into a form that was visible, understandable, and socially accepted. Yet beneath its surface remained the heartbeat of Samhain, a reminder that the unseen is ever present, that mystery persists even when we attempt to name it, and that the night itself is a canvas upon which both past and present continue to leave their marks. In observing these transformations, one realizes that Halloween is more than a holiday. It is a living tapestry, stitched with threads of reverence, fear, curiosity, and imagination. The sacred fires of the past may no longer burn in the same way, but the intention, the human need to honor, to remember, and to encounter what lies beyond, remains. And in that continuity, there is a silent, enduring truth. Even in the face of change, the night never loses its power, and those who look closely may still perceive the whispers of festival that has always been more than it appears. Through the church's guidance, the festival became a quiet paradox. It is at once familiar and enigmatic, festive and solemn, playful and deeply contemplative. And as centuries turned into decades and decades into years, the night retained a spiritual gravity, a reminder that beneath the surface of celebration lies an invitation to pause, to reflect, and to remember the worlds that exist just beyond our perception. Even now, when the modern world dresses in costumes and gathers around glowing pumpkins, the shadow of this transformation lingers. All Hallows' Eve, for all its outward innocence, carries within it the heartbeat of Samhain. The church may have guided the festival into the light, but the night still holds a space for quiet contemplation, for acknowledgement of the unseen, and for the subtle understanding that ancient truths are not so easily erased. They endure quietly, persistently, waiting for those who are willing to look beyond the familiar, to see the sacred threads woven into every flicker of flame, every carved symbol, and every whispered story. As the night deepens and the last candle burns low, one realizes that All Hallows' Eve is more than its name. It is a continuation of an ancient dialogue, a bridge between worlds, and a reminder that what is visible is only half the story. The unseen remains, persistent and patient, inviting all who will listen to remember, to honor, and to wonder the mystery that lies just beyond the veil. Across the centuries, the night of Samhain and its transformed counterpart, All Hallows' Eve, has always been rich with symbols. To the modern eye, masks, costumes, and carved pumpkins may seem like mere play, expressions of creativity or humor. Yet, beneath these simple forms lies a legacy of meaning, encoded by those who sought to navigate the thin veil between the living and the unseen. Every flicker of light, every hidden face, every shadow cast by a costume carries a memory of an ancient dialogue, a conversation with forces that are felt more than seen. Masks were never just decoration. In the forests and villages of the Celts, covering one's face was a profound act. To disguise oneself was to merge with the spirits, to become indistinguishable from the wandering souls that walk the night. In doing so, the living gained protection, a subtle shield against the unknown. The mask was a language of survival, a silent negotiation with the unseen, and a reminder that identity is as much about the soul as it is about the body. When one donned a mask, one assumed a temporary alignment with forces that could not be controlled, acknowledging the mystery that governs life and death. Costumes, in the same way, were more than mere play. They allowed the living to traverse the threshold of the ordinary world, adopting shapes and forms that resonated with the liminal energies of the night. Some became animals, representing instinct and natural power. Others took on forms of spirits or legendary beings, reflecting stories that have been passed down for generations. Each choice was symbolic, a reflection of inner understanding, a bridge between the visible and invisible, a reminder that life exists in layers both tangible and hidden. And then there are the pumpkins, the glowing lanterns that illuminate modern streets. Their bright faces are charming now, but their origins are rooted in protection and guidance. In ancient times, carved gourds or hollowed vegetables held light, meant to guide wandering spirits safely or to ward off those who might bring harm. The glow was not simply decorative. It was a signal, a beacon in the darkness, an acknowledgement of the interplay between light and shadow, life and death. The simple act of carving a face was a ritual, a conscious dialogue with the unseen, repeated across generations in evolving forms. Symbols extend beyond the objects themselves. The act of giving food, placing offerings outside, or sharing a communal fire was also emblematic. Each gesture carried intent, a layered message to both ancestors and spirits, reminding the living of their place within the web of existence. Modern trick-or-treating may obscure these origins, but its roots lie in these acts of provision and remembrance, a subtle echo of ancient reverence. Even the night itself is a symbol. Darkness was not feared. It was a teacher, a mirror, a space where the ordinary and extraordinary intersected. The shadows cast by masks, lanterns, and fires were reminders of hidden dimensions, of truths that could not be fully seen or spoken aloud. The night was a canvas upon which humans projected their understanding of the unseen, acknowledging that some forces can only be approached through symbolism, imagination, and respect. The subtle persistence of these symbols demonstrates a remarkable continuity. Across centuries, as Samhain transformed into All Hallows' Eve, and as celebrations became more social and performative, the symbolic language endured. Masks, costumes, and lights continue to mark the passage of the night, carrying within them a memory of protection, reflection, and connection. They remind us that even in play, humans have always sought to understand and interact with what cannot be fully grasped. What is perhaps most fascinating is how these symbols adapt, yet retain their core meaning. A child choosing a costume today may not consciously connect with the protective rituals of ancient peoples, but the act itself resonates with a collective memory. A pumpkin smile may seem whimsical, but its light harks back to practices of guidance and safeguarding. These are reminders that culture is not linear, it is layered, carrying fragments of understanding that persist even when their origins are obscured. The masks we wear, the faces we carve, the lights we kindle, all are part of a continuum. They are the language of shadows, a method of negotiating with mystery, a way to honor what exists beyond ordinary perception. They reflect a deep human need to confront uncertainty, to ritualize what is intangible, and to create tangible symbols of understanding. In observing these symbols, one begins to recognize a pattern. Halloween, in its playful and festive modern form, retains an enduring reverence for the unseen. Every costume, every glowing lantern, every card expression is a vessel of memory, a whisper from the past. The night invites us to step into this language, to consider what it might mean to wear a mask, to illuminate the dark, and to acknowledge that beneath the surface of celebration lies a depth of meaning few fully comprehend. Symbols, in their essence, are enduring teachers. They carry the weight of centuries, the intent of countless generations, and the silent wisdom of cultures that understood the delicate balance between life and death. To recognize the meaning behind the masks is to glimpse the spiritual undercurrent of Halloween itself, a reminder that what we see is always only a part of what exists, and that every shadow, every flicker of light, and every hidden face carries with it a history, a purpose, and a message. And so, as the night stretches on and modern revelers continue their festivities, it remains true that the masks and symbols of Halloween are not arbitrary. They are echoes, alive and persistent, of a night when humans first began to navigate the threshold between the worlds they could see and the worlds they could only feel. To honor these symbols is to acknowledge a lineage of thought, of ritual, and of reflection, a lineage that continues to whisper through the shadows, inviting each of us to see beyond the surface, to sense the invisible, and to wonder the mysteries that surround life and death. Even in the modern world, the echoes of Samhain and All Hallows' Eve continue to resonate, often unnoticed by those who participate in the celebrations. The costumes, the lanterns, the gatherings, and even the stories that circulate each October are not merely remnants of play or commerce. They are living traces of rituals designed to honor the unseen, to acknowledge the cycles of life and death, and confront the mystery that has always surrounded humanity. These echoes serve as subtle reminders that the past is never truly gone. It persists, shaping the present in ways that are often hidden beneath layers of familiarity. From the streets filled with children in costume to the media that dramatizes ghosts, witches, and spirits, modern culture carries forward motifs that originated in ancient practice. The fascination with the supernatural, the attraction to the liminal spaces between day and night, life and death, is rooted in the same awareness that guided the Celts centuries ago. What is now seen as entertainment is, at its core, an interaction with concepts that have always been central to human existence. The acknowledgement of mortality, the presence of unseen forces, and the rituals that allow us to navigate a world that is only partially visible. Advertising, films, and literature may repackage these symbols for consumption, yet even in their commercial forms, they perpetuate ancient truths. Every depiction of a wandering ghost, every haunted house, every narrative of spirits interacting with the living mirrors the original intention of Samhain, to make the invisible tangible, to confront the mysteries that linger at the edges of perception. There is an underlying continuity that survives modernization, a spiritual resonance that cannot be entirely erased by the trappings of popular culture. Consider the act of dressing up in costumes. While it is widely regarded as entertainment, it still carries a psychological echo of ancient protection rituals. Humans wear masks not only for amusement, but instinctively, to explore identity, to navigate fear, and symbolically align themselves with forces beyond ordinary understanding. Similarly, the exchange of treats, seemingly trivial, echoes the ancient offerings that were once made to spirits and ancestors. In these modern acts, the essence of the original night continues to whisper. Even the timing of the festival retains significance. October 31st, a day positioned between the harvest and the onset of winter, is a liminal moment. The threshold between light and dark, growth and decay, is subtly acknowledged in the rituals of today, whether consciously or not. Humanity continues to gravitate toward this threshold, drawn to its energy, reflecting an innate awareness of cycles that remain central to life itself. The persistence of Halloween is not simply cultural inertia. It is a human psyche responding to deep, archetypal truths that have been observed for millennia. Moreover, The influence extends beyond individual behavior. Communities gather, narratives are shared, and media perpetuates the motifs of spirits and the liminal. Each retelling, each image, each communal celebration strengthens the continuity of tradition. The ancient festival, though transformed, still exercises a quiet power, shaping perception, thought, and behavior. In a sense, Halloween functions as a collective memory, a reminder that humans are bound not only to the living, but also to what lies beyond ordinary sight. There is also a spiritual dimension that modern observers often overlook. Samhain and its descendants are fundamentally about acknowledgement of mortality, of unseen presences, and of forces that exist beyond direct control. When communities gather to honor this night, whether through costumes, storytelling, or ritual, they participate in a practice that transcends time, a subtle recognition that the world is layered, that existence is more than what is immediately perceived. The symbols, the acts, and the stories have evolved, yet their essence endures. Modern echoes of the ancient night invite reflection, providing a conduit for understanding continuity, connection, and remembrance. They remind humanity that the visible world is only part of a larger tapestry, and that the unseen threads, though quiet and often obscured, carry wisdom, warning, and wonder. Every flicker of a candle, every carved figure, and every whispered story sustains a dialogue between the present and the past, between the living and the unseen. It is this hidden influence that gives Halloween its enduring power. Even as it adapts to contemporary society, it retains a spiritual resonance, a subtle insistence that there is more than meets the eye. The night continues to be a space where humans can engage with the unknown, reflect on mortality, and consider the invisible forces that shape life. The celebration is both a continuation and a transformation, a living example of how ancient understanding persists, quietly guiding those who are attentive enough to perceive it. In this sense, modern Halloween is not simply a holiday. It is a bridge. It connects us to our ancestors, to their fears, their hopes, their rituals, and their wisdom. It invites participants to step into a space where the ordinary and extraordinary coexist, where symbols retain meaning, and where the unseen continues to whisper. Even in the glow of streetlights and the laughter of children, the night carries a subtle, persistent power, a reminder that the festival, in all its forms, is a living echo of a time when the veil was thin, when humans sought understanding, and when the unseen was honored with respect, vigilance, and reflection. And so, as the modern night unfolds, with its lights, costumes, and communal gatherings, one can perceive the persistence of something much older. It is a quiet, invisible influence, a resonance that links today with centuries past, inviting every observer to recognize that Halloween, in all its modern forms, is not merely a celebration. It is a continuation of an ancient dialogue, a conversation that reminds humanity of the ever-present mysteries that lie just beyond the edge of perception, waiting for those willing to see, reflect, and remember. From the earliest observances of Samhain, fire has held a singular place of power and significance. It was more than warmth against the encroaching cold of winter. It was a living symbol of life, guidance, and protection. Bonfires blaze on hilltops and in village centers, their flames reaching skyward as if to pierce the darkness itself, warding off unseen dangers and illuminating paths for spirits and humans alike. Every spark, every ember, carried intention. Fire was a language of the night, spoken fluently by those who understood its sacred dialect. The Celts recognized the dual nature of fire. It was a source of protection, yet also a tool for insight. To light a fire was to assert presence in a world shared with spirits, to draw boundaries where necessary, and to invite guidance where desired. The glow from these fires was not merely physical illumination. It was a bridge between realms, a sign that the living honored and acknowledged the forces that walked unseen. The night became a canvas painted in shades of light and shadow, each flicker of flame carrying meaning beyond comprehension. Lanterns and torches, later mirrored in the carved pumpkins of modern Halloween, were extensions of this ancient language. Hollowed gourds with glowing interiors were placed at thresholds, a beacon for wandering spirits and a warning to those with less benevolent intent. In many ways, These lights were declarations that the home was watched over, that the living respected the dead, and that the night, though dark and uncertain, was navigable when approached with reverence. The simple act of placing a light became an act of communication, a ritual that spoke to both the material and spiritual worlds. Fire also symbolized the cycles of life and death, central to the observances of Samhain. The harvest had ended. The days grew shorter and winter approached. The fire was both a celebration of abundance and a reminder of impermanence. It reflected a human desire to hold on to light, warmth, and life, even as the natural world transitioned toward cold and darkness. In this way, fire became a teacher, instructing observers in patience, respect, and attentiveness to the rhythms of the world. The significance of fire extended to communal gatherings. Villagers would come together around the flames, performing ceremonies and telling stories that connected them to ancestors and spirits. Songs, chants, and dances around the fire were more than entertainment. They were methods of engaging with the unseen, of ensuring continuity, and of reinforcing social and spiritual bonds. The fire served as a focal point, a shared presence that unified the community in purpose and awareness, reminding all who participated of the fragile yet persistent connection between life and the world beyond. In later centuries, as Samhain evolved into All Hallows' Eve, the symbolic language of fire persisted. Candles illuminated windows, lanterns guided revelers, and bonfires continued to mark significant nights. The modern jack-o'-lantern, smiling or grimacing, is a direct descendant of these practices, a vessel for light that carries with it ancient intent. The glow it emits is not merely decorative. It is a continuation of the dialogue between humans and the unseen, a reminder that illumination has always been intertwined with protection, reverence, and reflection. Fire's power lies not only in its ability to illuminate, but also in its capacity to transform. Flames consume the old, turning offerings into smoke that rises and mingles with the air, a symbolic gesture of release and communication. Smoke itself became a medium, carrying intentions and prayers upward, connecting the earthly to the spiritual. The flickering light and the rising smoke formed a dynamic language that spoke to those who knew how to interpret it, a language that persists in modern celebrations, often unconsciously, through candles, lanterns, and the glow of carved pumpkins. The enduring presence of fire and light in Halloween is a testament to the human need to engage with mystery and to assert connection with forces beyond comprehension. While modern observers may see only decoration or entertainment, each flame is a bridge, linking the present to centuries past, reminding us that light in darkness has always carried meaning. It teaches vigilance, respect, and reflection, providing a quiet guide to the uncertainty of night and the unknown. Even today, the act of lighting a candle or illuminating a window on Halloween night carries resonance. It is a continuation of an ancient practice, a subtle acknowledgement of life, death, and the unseen. The glow draws us in, asks us to pause, and reminds us that even in a world saturated with artificial light, there remains a deep, enduring human recognition of fire as messenger, protector, and teacher. In understanding the language of fire and light, one begins to perceive the layers of meaning embedded in Halloween. The festival is not simply a night of play or spectacle. It is a living tradition, one in which the past and present communicate through symbols that transcend time. Fire, in all its forms, continues to illuminate the threshold between the ordinary and the extraordinary, reminding us that the unseen is always present, that reflection and reverence endure, and that light is both protection and invitation, a call to engage with the mysteries that surround life, death, and the spaces in between. Through every flickering flame, every glowing lantern, and every illuminated figure, the night speaks. It whispers the ancient understanding that light guides, transforms, and connects. It is a subtle but persistent reminder that Halloween, in all its evolution, has never lost its soul. Fire remains at the heart of the celebration, a language as old as the festival itself, inviting all who watch to see, to reflect, and to recognize the unseen threads that bind humanity to the mysteries of the world. Throughout history, humans have sensed that the world is not as simple as it appears. Beneath the surface of everyday life lies a subtle reality, a dimension of existence that is rarely acknowledged but always present. During Samhain, the Celts recognized this hidden realm, referring to it as the space where the living and the dead coexist, where the veil between worlds grows thin, and where boundaries dissolve, allowing glimpses of what is otherwise unseen. This threshold, often called a veil, was both feared and revered, a liminal space that demanded attention, respect, and awareness. On this night, ordinary perception was insufficient. The movement of the wind, the crackle of fire, and the shadows cast by the flickering flames were interpreted as signs and messages. Ancestors were believed to walk among the living, offering guidance or warning. Their presence sensed more than witnessed. Shamans and druids, those trained in the ways of the unseen, acted as mediators, interpreting the whispers of spirits and the subtle currents that moved through the night. They understood that Samhain was a time when reality itself seemed to bend, revealing connections that are normally concealed from mortal eyes. The veil between worlds is a metaphor, but also a tangible experience for those who have studied ancient rituals and human consciousness. The Night of Samhain created conditions in which participants became acutely aware of impermanence, mortality, and the subtle energy that animates life. Ordinary actions, lighting a fire, carving a pumpkin, wearing a mask, took on extraordinary significance as they were aligned with the unseen currents of the universe. Through these acts, humans engage with the spiritual dimension, not through force, but through acknowledgement, observation, and presence. Across cultures, the concept of a thin veil recurs. The Celts were not alone in sensing the boundaries between worlds. Many ancient peoples recognized specific times of the year, nights of particular significance, or moments in the cycle of life when the invisible could be approached. Samhain represents one of the most enduring examples, a time codified by ritual, ceremony, and communal observation, in which human beings consciously position themselves between the realms of life and death. The spiritual significance of this threshold extends beyond fear or superstition. It was and remains an opportunity for reflection and understanding. By acknowledging the veil, the living could contemplate mortality, connect with memory, and honor forces larger than themselves. It was a moment of profound awareness, in which the ordinary world seemed to pause, allowing space for insight, reverence, and communion with the unseen. Modern Halloween, while transformed and often viewed through the lens of entertainment, still carries the imprint of this ancient awareness. The fascination with ghosts, spirits, and haunted places is not mere fantasy. It is a reflection of a deep human recognition that other dimensions exist, that life is layered, and that the unseen has meaning. The costumes, the rituals, and even the subtle act of reflection and remembrance echo the understanding of the veil, inviting participants to engage, consciously or unconsciously, with mysteries that transcend the material world. The veil is not only a boundary, it is also a bridge. It allows interaction, understanding, and reflection. Those who approach the night with awareness can perceive patterns, messages, and energies that are ordinarily hidden. The flicker of a candle, the shadow of a mask, the chill in the autumn air, all become signposts pointing toward a dimension that is both intimate and vast, a reality that has existed long before written history, and continues to exist alongside our own. In recognizing the spirit between worlds, one begins to grasp the essence of Halloween beyond its surface forms. The night is not simply about celebration. It is about perception, attentiveness, and reverence. It invites humans to observe that life is not solitary, that memory and energy persist, and that connection with the unseen is a timeless aspect of human experience. The thin veil offers both mystery and opportunity, a subtle reminder that reality is multifaceted, and that understanding requires patience, focus, and respect. The night of October 31st, when properly honored, becomes a threshold not just in time, but in consciousness. It asks the living to engage with mortality, with memory, and with the possibility that unseen forces are present and influential. The veil is not a barrier to fear. It is an invitation to reflection, an opportunity to perceive beyond ordinary sight and to recognize that the spaces we call invisible are as real in their own way as the ground beneath our feet. Even today, When children walk through neighborhoods in costume or when families light candles in windows, the experience mirrors the ancient understanding of Samhain. Participants step into a space where the worlds meet, whether consciously or unconsciously, and in doing so, they maintain a lineage of awareness that stretches back centuries. The spirit between worlds persists, quietly guiding, reminding, and inviting those who are attentive to see what lies beyond, to listen to what is not spoken, and to acknowledge that the unseen is always near. The veil is not thin every night, nor is it always perceptible. But on this night, historically and symbolically, humanity remembers that there is more than the tangible, more than what can be measured or fully comprehended. Samhain, All Hallows Eve, Halloween. They are markers of a timeless truth. The living and the unseen are interwoven, and those who honor this connection gain a subtle insight into the depth, complexity, and mystery of existence itself. As centuries passed, the ancient night of Samhain evolved once more, not only through religious reinterpretation, but also through cultural and commercial transformation. The once sacred fires, protective masks, and rituals of reflection began to merge with markets, media, and the allure of consumer culture. Halloween became, in many places, a spectacle of commerce. Streets filled with decorations, shelves stocked with candy, costumes mass-produced for every imaginable character. At first glance, the sacred purpose of the night seems obscured, hidden beneath layers of playful indulgence and commercial enterprise. Yet, even under this modern disguise, the night retains subtle echoes of its origin. The act of wearing a costume, though now often chosen from a store rather than carved by hand, continues to serve as a form of transformation. The mask, whether frightening, whimsical, or heroic, still allows the individual to step into a liminal space, a temporary suspension of ordinary identity. In donning another persona, one unknowingly participates in a centuries-old ritual, engaging with mystery, navigating the unseen, and exploring dimensions of self and world that are usually hidden. Candy and offerings, while primarily seen as incentives to children, echo the ancient gestures of giving and honoring. Providing treats becomes a symbolic act of generosity, community, and acknowledgement of the night's deeper meaning, even if the participants are unaware of the ancient precedent. The exchange is a ritual, simplified and disguised, but still a continuation of human interaction with the unseen and the symbolic. Commercialization has also popularized storytelling. Films, television shows, and literature dramatize spirits, haunted spaces, and supernatural events, creating an environment in which fascination with the unknown thrives. These narratives, though shaped for entertainment, mirror the original purpose of Samhain: to explore, reflect upon, and engage with forces beyond the ordinary. Fear and curiosity, laughter and awe, continue to guide the participants through experiences that, at their core, are remarkably similar to those of their ancestors. The glow of streetlights, pumpkins, and decorative lanterns, amplified in modern cities, is a continuation of the same symbolism that fire once represented. Illumination in darkness, guidance of the living and respect for the departed, still resonates, even as it has become part of spectacle and pageantry. The night remains a threshold in the light, a silent participant in the ritual, reminding humans of the fragile boundary between the visible and invisible. Even advertising, marketing, and commercial narratives preserve traces of ancient ritual, albeit transformed. The designs of costumes often draw on archetypal figures, ghosts, witches, supernatural beings, figures that have existed in folklore for centuries. These symbols continue to carry meaning, embedding subtle reminders of mortality, transformation, and the liminal nature of life. Consumers unknowingly participate in a symbolic dialogue that spans millennia, interacting with stories and forms created to navigate the unknown. The persistence of ritual through commercialization demonstrates the resilience of tradition. While modern Halloween may seem frivolous or purely festive, its practices are layered with historical and spiritual significance. Behind every illuminated pumpkin, every exchange treat, and every mask worn, there's an echo of ancient intention, protection, reflection, and engagement with the unseen. Humanity's need to recognize the cycles of life and death, to honor the unknown, and a ritualized connection has not disappeared. It has merely found new expression. Commercialization, rather than erasing the past, has paradoxically preserved it. The night is accessible to millions, and its symbols are ubiquitous. Each person who participates, knowingly or not, becomes a link in the chain that connects modern observers to ancestors, to rituals, and to the spiritual resonance of Samhain. The sacred intention has been transformed into form, but its essence remains, whispering beneath layers of spectacle and entertainment. Even as costumes and candy dominate the streets, there is room for reflection. Observers who choose to look beyond the surface may perceive the persistence of ancient wisdom. They can recognize that Halloween, in all its modern trappings, is a living continuation of a dialogue between humans and the unseen. The commercial disguise may change the exterior, but the interior pulse, the rhythm of ritual, symbol, and reflection, remains intact, connecting the past, present, and future in a subtle but profound way. In this way, modern Halloween is both celebration and remembrance, spectacle, and ritual. It teaches quietly that human culture adapts without losing memory, that symbolism can survive transformation, and that the unseen continues to influence the world even when masked by commerce. The night remains a threshold, a liminal space where the ordinary and extraordinary meet, and where, beneath the neon and glitter, the whispers of Samhain persist, waiting for those who are willing to perceive them. Through the commercial lens, the power of Halloween is not diminished. It is merely veiled. The night continues to guide, protect, and provoke reflection, inviting all participants to engage with mystery, history, and the layers of meaning that have persisted through centuries. The unseen remains as present as ever, and those who look closely will recognize the living echoes of a festival that has never truly been forgotten. As the night of October 31st draws to a close, the flickering lights dim, the masks are removed, and the streets fall silent once more. Yet the echoes of Samhain persist, woven into the very fabric of the celebration we now call Halloween. Across centuries, through fire and shadow, through ritual and transformation, humanity has maintained a quiet dialogue with the unseen, a recognition that life and death, the visible and the invisible, are intertwined in ways we are only beginning to understand. What began as a sacred festival, a time when the veil between worlds was thin and spirits walked among the living, has evolved, transformed by religion, culture, and commerce. Yet beneath every modern costume, every glowing pumpkin, and every festive gathering lies a subtle continuity, a heartbeat that connects us to ancestors, to forgotten rituals, and to mysteries that have always surrounded us. Halloween is more than spectacle. It is memory, reflection, and the acknowledgement of forces unseen but deeply felt. The symbols, the fires, the masks, and the stories serve as reminders that life is layered, and that the world we see is only one part of a greater whole. They invite us to pause, to reflect, and to recognize that mystery persists, even when it is disguised or commercialized. Every flicker of light, every shadowed figure, every whispered story is a bridge between the ordinary and the extraordinary, a subtle call to engage with the unseen dimensions of existence. Even in our modern world, saturated with distractions and artificial illumination, the ancient truths endure. Halloween reminds us that curiosity, reverence, and awareness of the invisible are timeless human practices. It asks us to consider mortality, to honor memory, and to acknowledge the forces that operate beyond the realm of comprehension. In doing so, it transforms from a night of mere entertainment into a living testament to the continuity of human consciousness, ritual, and imagination. So as you walk through streets adorned with lights, as you carve pumpkins or wear a mask, remember that you are participating in something far older than the present moment. You are stepping into a ritual that has survived centuries, a night that has been both sacred and transformed, a dialogue that continues between the living and the unseen. The veil is thin, the echoes are real, and the mysteries endure. Halloween is more than a holiday. It is a reminder, a reflection, and a call to honor the unseen threads that connect all life, past and present. In the end, the night whispers the same lesson as always held. The unseen is never absent, the past is never truly forgotten, and the mysteries that surround us are always waiting for those who are willing to look, to listen, and to wonder. In every mask, every flame, every shadow, the ancient night lives on, inviting us to remember, reflect, and acknowledge the timeless dance between the worlds we inhabit and the worlds that exist just beyond our sight.